Well, hello there and happy Tuesday. I hope you're doing well. I'm Nicole and I am here to chat with you today about intuitive eating. Sorry, I just got like a notice up on my thing here. I was a little distracted for a second. Here to chat about intuitive eating. So I have seen a lot of questions come up about dieting and weight loss and that sort of thing, and then a lot of great answers about intuitive eating. And it seems like this is a topic that our group is interested in, and I love talking about it. So I thought it would be good to dive in a little bit more over the next few weeks into more topics related to us as adults and our relationship with food and our bodies and eating and dieting and the diet culture that we live in and all of those things. So, in our group, we often talk so much about our kids, which is great. And that's the whole, point of why we started this, was to really raise our kids to have a healthy relationship with food. And while we want that for our kids, I'm also hoping that as adults, that's something that we're able to have too, that we can really heal our own relationships with food. And so, one of the major or like big philosophies around this is intuitive eating. And so, I want to talk today kind of from like a bird's eye view, more about just what it is, how it came into play, and whether or not it's something that you might want to learn more about and start applying in your life. And then if you have more questions, definitely ask, and we'll dive deeper into some of the principles in the next few weeks. But today is kind of more of an overview. So whatever questions you have right off the bat, feel free to ask. If you're here with me live or if you're watching the replay, drop them in the comments and I'll always come back around and answer. Or as we're going along, if anything comes up and you need some clarity or anything, feel free to ask. So, let's talk about like why this comes up. So first of all, I saw some questions in the group about, wanting to lose weight or what's the best way. And then people kind of chime in with intuitive eating. And we often will delete comments here about providing weight loss advice. And while you're not wrong for wanting to lose weight, it absolutely makes sense why you would, especially the culture that we live in that really values thinness and is constantly promoting different ways to lose weight. There's also a lot of harm that can be done in that. And so it's not something that we want to promote in this group. And we'll talk more about that harm and everything else, and how weight loss is generally not sustainable. Intentional weight loss is generally not sustainable for most people. And that suggesting weight loss really suggests that there's one body type that's preferable or ideal. And then what does that really mean to people that are in larger bodies, and how does that feel? And so that's why in this group, it's not a topic because of the harm that it can cause. And that doesn't mean that you can't talk about wanting to lose weight and what that feels like for you. This is support for you. Absolutely, that makes sense. But we're not going to talk about ways to do that because we don't promote intentional weight loss, okay? So on the flip side of that, if you're not, going for intentional weight loss, like what are you doing? And so I'm going to talk about like what intuitive eating really is. And so the opposite of basically diet culture is learning to listen to your own body cues and relying on those internal cues. So if you think of dieting and diet culture as prescriptive rules, it's basing your food choices and when you eat, right? We talk about kids, what, when, and where, but it's basing those decisions off of external guidelines. Maybe that's, I'm not allowed to eat past 7 p.m. or we're cutting out this food group over here, or I'm only allowed to eat this many calories or count my macros. So all of those are external reasons to eat or not eat. And internal cues are your own hunger and fullness and food preferences and desires. And so it's like, I'm hungry right now, so let me go get some food. Do I feel like a meal? Do I feel like a snack? What type of food do I feel like? As opposed to what dieting would be, I'm hungry right now, looking at my watch. Is it time to eat? Am I allowed to eat? You might even feel guilty for wanting to eat, right? And dieting or prescriptive plans can take place in so many ways. It also could be, I'm hungry now. What food am I allowed to eat? And then having to go down that road of specific foods that you're allowed to eat. So it can be all sorts of things, but it's eating or not eating based on external guidelines, where internal cues are hunger, fullness, preferences, satisfaction with food. So intuitive eating is trusting your own cues, trusting your body to grow at the right rates and into the right size that it's supposed to be, right? So it's trusting yourself to eat. It's eating without rules and guidelines, but listening to those internal cues, okay? So again, diet culture, dieting, prescriptive ways of eating, external cues, intuitive eating, or just eating intuitively is listening to your body. So when we talk about intuitive eating, it's basically just eating, right? Like just eating normally. I'm hungry, let me get some food. That would be eating intuitively. And how this got to be more of what I'll call like an approach to eating or a philosophy is that two dietitians, Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch, found that they were working with so many of their clients. And even though they had an approach that was very much like all foods fit and, listen to your body, it was still prescriptive in some ways. Like, yes, you can eat the foods you want, but here's a meal plan or here are meal guidelines. And they just found that their clients were not doing well with that still. And so they started working on how they could help their clients really have more like lasting results, right? Eating in a way that feels good for a long period of time instead of doing something for a period of time and then like falling off the wagon essentially. And so they termed this approach intuitive eating. And so I think of that as like, right, like in caps, intuitive eating, it's an idea, it's been coined by these two dietitians, Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch, but also just eating intuitively is just listening to your body. Okay, so it really is just eating naturally. So when they came up with though that this is an actual like approach, and the reason that we need to have this approach is because so many of us have been on diets or have had rules or guidelines about how we're supposed to eat or that we're allowed to eat in certain ways. And so because of that, we needed guidance to get back to listening to those internal cues. So we could just say that like eating intuitively is listening to your body cues, but so many people don't know how to do that because they've been using prescriptive ways of eating for periods of time that could be for years and years, or it could be a short period. But so many of us have been doing it for so long that we don't know how to get back to that internal guidance. So they came up with these 10 principles essentially that guide you back to internal regulation when it comes to food. So for our purposes today, I'm not going to dive into like each principle or anything, but they are things like reject the diet mentality. So really understanding what diet culture is and starting to move away from that. It's about making peace with food and really feeling comfortable with all different foods and trusting different foods instead of saying that some are good and some are bad. It's honoring your hunger and listening to your fullness. It's recognizing your emotions when eating and why you might be turning to food emotionally. They talk about the satisfaction factor. There is a principle on gentle nutrition, which is how do we kind of apply some of the knowledge that we know about nutrition, but without it turning into rigid rules and guidelines. There's also parts about body respect and movement. So in a nutshell, and just very generalized, those are the different topics for these 10 principles. So in the actual like intuitive eating paradigm in the book or the workbook, they walk you through each principle and give you action steps and everything that you can take. So if you're not familiar, getting the book, Intuitive Eating, that the 4th edition just came out last year, you could get that book, or their workbook is great because it has real like step-by-step activities that you can work on as well. So again, all of these principles are to guide you back to reconnecting with your hunger, with your fullness, with your food preferences, so that you can use your internal cues to regulate your food. So if you have questions, let me know, but that's like a big nutshell of what intuitive eating actually is. Now, one of the major questions that often comes up is, will it help me lose weight? So when we start looking at will it help me lose weight, we're often back in, though, the diet mentality. Like, I'm going to follow this program to get these results. And intuitive eating is really more about an approach, a process, a philosophy for reconnecting. It's not results driven that you're going to get these exact results or this body type. So the answer to that is you might lose weight if that's what your body wants to do when you're listening to it more clearly. But you also might stay the same. You might notice that there's actually no change in your body, or you could gain weight if you've been potentially restricting your intake and not eating enough, not allowing your body to grow in the way that it needs. You could gain weight. So there is not a, again, body type or weight goal with intuitive eating. It's really about reconnecting to yourself and healing your relationship with food and using your own intuitive guidance to do that. So it is not a weight loss tool, and there's no guarantee for what will happen with your weight. And if you're focusing on weight loss, that often will distract you from listening to those internal cues, because you're still going to be making some decisions with the hope that you're going to lose weight, instead of truly being able to tune in and rely on what your body's telling you. So even though you might want to lose weight, that doesn't mean you can't do an intuitive eating approach. You still can if you want to lose weight. But if you're working with someone, or as you go through the process of it, we often are going to ask you to kind of put that on the back burner at least. Like, we can talk about it. We can recognize that that's a normal desire. Let's talk about why you might want that. But we want to put it on the back burner in terms of it's going to be really hard to truly listen to your body and heal your relationship with food if it's driven by weight loss. Okay, so like it's accepting I want to lose weight, and that's not going to be my focus right now. I'm going to set that aside and I can come back to that. But right now I'm truly going to focus on healing my relationship with food and looking at and assessing why I really want to lose weight. What do I think that's going to bring me? And being able to take a look at that without judgment, but with curiosity. Oftentimes, the things we think we're going to get from weight loss, we can actually get in other ways, right? So what is that the thing that you truly want to have? So again, I know that's like an overview, but I just want to really clarify that it is not a weight loss tool, and your body could change in different ways, and we don't know what that's going to be. That's not to say that you won't lose weight. We just don't know for sure. Okay. And you might have an idea based on your history and what your relationship with food has been like in the past, and what your body has done when you've tried different diets or not been dieting, or what your body was like before you ever started dieting. Like, we might have some ideas of what will happen based on your history and your genetics, but we can't guarantee that any one thing will happen with your body. Okay. So if intuitive eating really isn't for weight loss, what is it? Well, one, like I've said, it's to really work on getting back in touch and tuning in to what your body needs. It's healing your relationship with food. It's healing your relationship with yourself so that you don't feel guilty or bad about yourself for your food choices, right? Or the flip side, that you don't feel like elitist and like you're so good and worthy because you're eating good or being healthy, right? Like, we often talk about how food has no moral value. What you eat does not determine what type of person that you are, whether you're good or bad or anything else. Okay, so it's really healing that relationship with food and with yourself. Eating intuitively also actually allows you to feel more in control of food, and that's different than like trying to control your food and to control your body. but it takes the energy out of it. Often when we diet or we have prescriptive ways of eating, we feel dissatisfied with our food choices. We might feel frustrated. We might feel hungry because we're not responding. We might have anxiety around food or obsession with it. We might feel out of control when we're around it or binge eat at times, either like on or off the wagon type of thing. So it actually allows you to feel more in control, but not necessarily to be controlling your food or controlling your body, if that makes sense. Okay, but it takes the charge away from it all so that you don't feel so out of control. And when you first start working on this approach, that doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes it does feel really exciting to get to allow yourself to eat different foods, and that might feel kind of scary. But the long term is to start feeling like all food has less energy and is more neutral, just like we talk about with our kids, right? Wanting to present it neutrally. And that's the space that we want to be in too, so that food doesn't feel charged for us as adults, or so that we don't understand why we're turning to food in certain situations, right? Whether it's emotional or whether it's because we're being driven by deprivation or hunger, physical needs. Okay, so it takes all that away so that we can truly tune in and just listen to what we need. So again, dieting is that prescriptive eating that leads to dissatisfaction, potentially feeling out of control around food. Intuitive eating is sustainable. It's you getting in touch with your cues and being able to continue eating this way for your lifetime. And it's adaptable and it's flexible. And as you eat intuitively, you might find that certain ways of eating feel better to you at certain phases of your life, or that actually you notice certain foods do make you not feel well and you learn that you'd rather not eat them in certain quantities. Like, it doesn't mean that you can't make adjustments to your food, but it means that you're doing it based on how you feel and that you feel more in tune with that, right? As opposed to just, I'm not allowed to do that, or this is a rule, I can't eat this way. And 95% plus people who lose weight with prescriptive eating, that intentional weight loss, end up gaining the weight back. They end up gaining it back. That's why so many people cycle through, right? You see, they lose the weight, then they gain it back, and sometimes gain back even more. And a lot of times that's because of that deprivation. And then one, their body's fighting to feel safe again. So on a physical level, their body wants to be at a higher weight to feel safer and more protective. And it might be coming from that mental and emotional deprivation from not allowing themselves the amount of food or the types of food that they really wanted. So dieting doesn't really work. And I know you're probably thinking, well, I have that one friend that's kept it off for years. Maybe, but they're the outlier. And maybe that's their genetics, is to naturally be in that body size anyway. And it just looks that way. Or we see so many fitness gurus or influencers who share what they eat in a day or how their body looks this way. Some of them have disordered patterns with food. Some of them are just naturally in that body size. And it makes us feel like, well, if only we ate that way, that's what we should look like too. But the truth is, our weight is primarily determined by genetics, among some other things, but primarily by genetics. So just because you eat a certain way doesn't mean you're going to look a certain way. Right? We could all eat exactly the same and we're all still going to look different, whether that's height or weight or body shape. It's all going to be different because we all have different genetics. So part of this is also really accepting that piece of it, which can be hard, especially if you feel like your body is not necessarily what you want it to be or the ideal body by society standards. Okay. So why might you want to take this approach then, right? You're like, oh, well, if it's not necessarily going to help me lose weight, why do I want to do this? Well, maybe you've tried dieting so many times and it's really not getting you where you want to go. Maybe it doesn't feel good. Maybe you've lost and regained weight over and over. Maybe you feel like crap when you're on diets. I've heard people, I was in my kids' preschool class one day and one of the moms is like, I'm doing keto and it's working. And then she went on to tell me how you know, she has a headache all the time and she's angry and she's easily like irritable. And I was like, that's what we're calling working, right? Like we think we have to suffer for these things, but what if you don't need to do that? And what if you can just trust your body? So if you're tired of dieting, if eating in these prescriptive ways doesn't feel good to you, any of those things, then you really might want to take a closer look at this approach. If you feel out of control around food, like you can't trust yourself, if you feel like you don't even know when you're hungry or full anymore, you don't know why you eat. Like if you're just tired of all of this, if you're tired of feeling like food has so much pull or so much energy, or if you feel anxious around certain types of foods, or if you have strong opinions about certain types of foods, if you notice the way that your kids eat is bringing up a reaction within you, all of these are reasons that you really might want to work on healing your own relationship with food that have nothing to do with actually losing weight. Okay. Maybe, you know, I want this to be about you. Like, I really want you to do this for you, but maybe it's also a motivator to think about your kids and to think about, you know, what kind of role model do I want to be for my child? Do I want them to feel my anxiety around food? Do I want them to see me never eat variety, only eat really healthy? Do I want to make them think that that's like the right way to eat or how you should eat, right? Or do I want them to see me feel out of control with food or like I can't be around certain foods? You know, so maybe your child is your motivator right now too, to say like, I have had a pretty crummy history with food my entire life. I've been on and off of diets. I've never felt good in my body. And I want to provide something different for my child. And you can learn so much about how to feed your child, and you can do that beautifully. And it will be so much easier and it'll take it to another level if you work on that for yourself. So again, whether or not this is about your child, I think you absolutely deserve it. But I also want to plant that seed that if that's something you really want for them, that may be a motivator too. Okay, so tell me, do you have questions about any of this? I told you today was more of an overview, but I absolutely want to dive into more topics. I did put out like a poll or a survey in the group about what topics are most interesting to you, but also feel free in the comments to leave any specific questions you have, topics that you want covered, because I'm happy to keep like putting information out in written form, as well as to do more Facebook Lives on all of this. Like I mentioned before too, the great resources for you are the Intuitive Eating book and workbook. If you just want to understand more, you can also get them on audio. There's also great podcasts. A lot of those are listed in our resources file here too, that'll really give you a lot more information. So feel free to comment right on this video. Also feel free to write your own posts in this group talking about it. Just be very mindful of labeling body sizes as with any specific judgment. Or asking for weight loss advice. Those aren't things that we want to talk about, but we are here to support you if you're really wanting to lose weight and need support, not in how to actually do that, but potentially how to shift your mindset or how to understand that better or to get more resources for healing your relationship with food. You're not wrong for wanting to lose weight again. And I can't emphasize that enough. It's not like taboo, you're not allowed to talk about it. That's not it at all. But we want to create a safe space for all people in all body sizes here. And in doing that, that means not offering weight loss tips or judgment about body size or about certain foods. Okay, so all right, well, I hope that's a good jumping off point for you. Like I said, no matter when you are tuning into this, please let me know what you need more of. I am here to support you. We all are. Let me know if you have any questions. I will come back around and answer. For now, I will let you go, and I hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday and week ahead. Okay, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.